Hello, everyone. This is take 3 of my attempt to interview my 2 favorite ENFPs here. And so, in case you didn't notice, for my last 2 ENFP videos, and even some of my non-ones, I've been talking about my 2 ENFP friends, and spoiler alert, here they are.
Hi!
And this is Danielle and
Hi.
Matt. Hopefully I don't need to differentiate which one is which.
I'm Danielle.
What, you're going to be Dan Matt or Matt Yell now?
It could buy like a celebrity name. We could do that. Matt Yell. Mayell.
Matt Yell?
Matt Yell. Or
Good
Dan
because
Hugh.
Matt yelled. Good.
Yeah.
Anywho, so for those of you that haven't watched my Myers-Brigg videos before, my name's Paul. I'm an ISTJ. These two, this webcam. These two, very awkwardly using my right hand to point to them, are ENFPs. They actually, both of them tested while I was in the room, which was really cool. So I'm just going to be asking a couple of interview questions, eventually get to like how we get along despite having completely opposite letters. So first off, congratulations on being engaged.
Thank you.
The relationship that so many people are like, it's never going to happen.
What? What does that mean?
Well, because they say opposites attract.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And like
True.
with you two having like all the same letters. And in fact, sometimes I even
Gotcha.
introduce you guys like, okay, so I've actually known Danielle like for a couple of years before I knew Matt. And so after she started dating Matt and Matt was like on the scene all the time, I started saying, like, when I was describing Matt to my parents, I would say, so the good way to describe Matt is like he's a male version of Danielle. Like, that's how similar they were.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'd like to ask is, like, once you guys started, like, dating and eventually getting engaged, what would you say were the strengths and weaknesses of being so similar?
That we have the same things that we struggle with, and that we're same strength and same weaknesses, basically. So I think not as much you because you're more organized than I am, but like for instance, like planning different things because we're both more spontaneous. So I think planning for things, we just kind of
We roll with it.
yeah.
We roll with it. It works out.
Oh, especially today. We went to Mass together, and right after Mass, in quite an airheaded move myself, I left my keys in my other pocket because I'm so used to wearing the same pants that when I changed routine, that like messed up my inner structure. So I was like freaking out, mostly in my head. I usually kept it calm. I was like, okay, so now we can't get into the house, so that like screws up with this itinerary that I had for the day. And they're just like, well, why don't we just drive around the neighborhood and we'll just go wherever you want. And I'm just like, wherever you want? Like, have you even planned out where you're going? They're like, nope.
I think it's fun to like just some of the best memories I have are just spontaneous things too. Like sometimes when I plan things out, then I have like expectations about things, and I don't really like to have expectations because if it's better, then it's awesome. But then if it's not, then I'm like disappointed. That way, I feel like I'm not like disappointed about things when I don't really have a plan. I don't have like expectations. Like that was what
Preconceived notions.
Yeah, that was like we were talking about with the wedding. Like we don't want to have like ideas about how it should be and stuff. Like I think that if we just kind of go with it, then whatever happens is like the memories we make. So I think that's important too.
That's actually a good life lesson. Fellow ISTJs take note of that because sometimes surprises can be fun. I remember back when it was my birthday, they, along with another friend of mine who's INFJ, decided that they were going to take me to a symphony. And for those of you that have actually watched my created playlists on my channels, symphonies are my favorite kind of music. And they didn't even ask me, like, Paul, what do you want to do for your birthday? They just said, well, hey, is it okay if we leave it a surprise for now? And even though, like, the day of, I was, like, frantically pacing around the living room, like, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. How the heck am I going to figure this out? And then once I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys knew that that was, like, the perfect thing.
Aw.
But on the other hand, I was also impressed by how much they have learned from my type how to adapt. So, for instance, when Danielle was telling me on the phone, like, how she's like, I actually have a plan for your birthday. I was like, you have a plan? You're turning into a regular ENFJ here.
I think it's good because you plan so much of our hangouts and things that we do. I think it's nice to, like, have a surprise for you. Like, I think that's what, like, Kara and I wanted to do, and Matt. Like, we all just wanted to, like, have something that you didn't have to plan, you didn't have to worry about, and then that way you could just sit back and kind of enjoy it.
We kind of switched roles because we're usually more, like, go with the flow, and if you have the plan and stuff, it's perfect for us. But now, like, we did all the planning, and you had to go with the flow, so it's kind of like switching roles.
Yeah, it was a nice little, like, glimpse into your mind a bit. And especially...
Except we don't pace. Like, back and forth, like, ah!
Well, I mean, INFJs are known for being very structured mostly in their brain, so that also helped her, because outwardly INFJs are very similar to ENFPs in that regard. But, no, regarding, like, the biggest type difference, I think, like, for the most part, we've mostly haven't had too much trouble with that over the years, but I think in recent months, what's really been kind of a huge struggle, especially, like, last year, was the difference between the sensing and intuition. Because for those of you that don't know functions, my dominant function is introverted sensing, which, to give an example of what sensing is sensing is about that which is, like, the concrete, definable, like, it is what it is reality. So, for instance, this computer screen right here is a computer screen. There's really no hidden messages behind it. Whereas an intuitive person might try to think, like, how is this connected to a bunch of other things? Or, like, what other hidden meanings might it have? Or, in some extremely bizarre cases, which you guys might actually think are in Ripley's Believe It or Not. But I've actually been on quite a few forums on Facebook where I've heard ENFPs say, like let's take all the bottles that we have from our recycle bin and, like, make a clubhouse out of them.
Oh. Okay, just for the record... We just now made a fort, like, 2 days ago.
Not out of empty bottles, though.
No, but out of chairs and, like bed sheets and,
well, that was
like,
just fun.
Yeah.
It was like a Tuesday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so you're right.
So ENFPs are very creative, but, like, intuitives in general. They just love new ideas. My type is usually tried and true, but also extremely literal. So, like, if someone says, don't cry over spilled milk, I'll be like, but I'm not crying and no one spilled any milk. I'm not going to necessarily see the deeper meaning unless I've really tried.
I think that was, something we had to adapt to, too. Because sometimes I would be sarcastic and stuff. And, like, I would realize, like, oh, whoa, I didn't mean it that way. But, like, some things would come across different than, like, what I thought, like, I was saying. So I think that's something we've kind of, like, navigated in our friendship, too.
Like, I've learned to... like, not be overly meticulous in my descriptions, because sometimes they're okay with, like, getting the general picture of things. In addition, on their end, they've had to learn to be a bit more precise, for lack of a better word, in how they phrase abstract concepts. So, for instance, love. Now, in a sensing mind like mine, the Greeks had 6 different definitions of love. Like, there is love for objects or possessions, there's, like, love for family, love for friends, spousal love, and then agape love, which is, like, the kind of love that pretty much only God has. And so when they would say things like, Paul, I love you and you're awesome and amazing, I'd be like, huh? What the heck does that mean? Like, how do you love me? Can you explain to me what this difficult concept of love is? So eventually the symphony was one of the ways that it finally got through to me. It's like, oh, because no one in their right mind would take someone to a symphony and pay all that money and coordinate that much unless they truly loved that person or were trying to bribe them. But
we're not trying to bribe you.
Obviously it wasn't the latter, because it ended up being amazing.
Aw.
So I think another thing that... I think another reason why I admire ENFPs in general, but especially these two, because I've known Danielle since 2011 and Matt since... Because of my face memory, I'm just going to say early 2014, because he claims he met me earlier.
I think 13 because of the ugly sweater Christmas parties. My first ugly sweater Christmas party was 2012.
I do remember that.
13, and then...
Yeah, I remember the blue sweater and the Santa hats, and me cropping out Danielle's earlobes because I'm a needlephobe.
Anyways.
That's another little difference we've had to sort of work out, is like I'm known for just saying what's on my mind, because sensors are all about like facts and realities, and sometimes we forget like, oh, whoops, these people actually have feelings. But I think like in terms of feelings, both ISTJs and ENFPs share the same functions, just in a different order. So for instance, all three of us are introverted feelers, but for them it's a secondary function. For me, it's a tertiary one. And I think that really helps me to appreciate our friendship, because with my feeling being tertiary, sometimes like I feel very deeply, but oftentimes I don't know how to express it, or it comes across primitively, or sometimes I don't even know what I'm feeling at all. And sometimes they like know how to dig it out of me. I don't even know how the heck that works, so I'll let them take over from here. Like, how do you guys get people to like externalize what they're feeling on the inside? Like, what would you say is your secret?
I don't know. It's not really a secret. It's just we could either tell when you're happy or sad or something like that, just because we know you as a person, or even sometimes if we don't know you, even if like we didn't know you, I think that we would still be able to tell if like someone was happy or upset or feeling something like that. So then, I don't know, just talking with you, and I don't know. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Do you think because the feeling is secondary introverted and not extroverted, perhaps you need to ask more questions to like piece it out in your head? Like, because introverted feelers are typically more aware of their own emotions than those of others, which is kind of a paradox for the ENFP, because as I've said in another one of my videos, the greatest joy an ENFP can have is when others are happy. They like promoting harmony. Maybe that's just an NF thing. I don't know. But would you say that's accurate, that typically to get a good picture of someone's emotions, it typically involves like asking questions? You can't just be like an INFJ and use your laser vision like, I know how you feel.
I think that I don't know, I think that we can just tell like when someone is upset or happy or something, and just talking it out. You know, we don't necessarily have to like plan out what we're going to say or anything, but just kind of talking with you and just talking it out. Sometimes that
I think helps. Too, like having questions and asking things, I think that a lot of times like helps me piece together maybe what the situation is, because a lot of times I know you're upset, but I don't know how you're feeling, or like what like was the antecedent to that event. So I think a lot of times like I like to ask questions and just kind of delve a little bit deeper into like why you're feeling the way. And a lot of times just from talking to you, I can like understand what you're saying from certain words that you'll say or how you'll say things, and I think I'll kind of overall get the bigger picture of what's been going on. And then it's easier to give like advice or to talk to somebody or talk like through things if you kind of know more information about it. So I think that's helpful too.
Yeah, so by knowing all of that information, it helps us understand how you would feel giving all of these facts. Well, you know, now I'm starting to sound like you, so never mind. No, but I'm trying to like explain it, because I'm not used to explaining how I like talk to people or something like that. But yeah.
So we mentioned this in an earlier take. Hopefully we can get it right, because we were on a roll the last take. But they actually both took the Myers-Brigg while I was in the vicinity. Both tested as ENFP, though admittedly Matt claims the results might have been butchered because he was hearing me over the phone. And I was like inputting the answers for him. But based on my studies, I have no doubt that it's true. But one thing that was interesting on the test results was that their letters, despite being the same, fluctuated in terms of like the percentage to the other letter. And to sort of avoid having to completely try to remember, okay, how did we do it perfectly that last take, I'll just summarize for you guys. So Danielle reported scoring a lot lower on the extroversion-introversion scale. So do you want to explain that to the audience a bit?
So for me, I'm a lot less extroverted than Matt. But
I still disagree with that.
But I think just in general, you're more extroverted than I am. So I think it's good because we're both extroverted. But I think like having Matt there, sometimes he will make me a little bit more extroverted, or I think you understand too like how I'm feeling just by us having like the similar letters.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to have like that kind of balance, because if we were both as extroverted as you, or both
well, there was that day that you guys did the marching band when when an INFJ friend and I were trying to like have a nice serious discussion, and I was just like, "What?"
Oh yeah. Remember we were at the GRC and we were walking around.
Band.
Yeah. No, we were doing more of the like a conga line.
Yeah.
And then like I just looked out the window and we were just doing that.
Yeah.
I think I had a sombrero too.
I think so, because I think that's what spurred the.
Sorry, my computer got inactive for a minute there.
I think it's. I know. Good thing it's still going.
Yeah, because the last take, I accidentally like pulled out the power cord.
Yeah, but
even ISTJs make airheaded mistakes, so don't ever think I'm just pointing fingers at these guys.
Thanks, Paul.
hey, I forgot my keys earlier today, so it happens.
Yeah, and I think the other difference between us two is I am higher in emotion than you are. So I think that might just be like, a difference between guys and girls anyway, but I think I'm just a little bit more emotional, which is good though that you're still high in emotion, so you can kind of relate to me in that way. So I think if I had somebody like when if I was in a relationship with someone that wasn't as like emotional, I feel like that would be hard because you couldn't understand me.
Yeah. Well, I think that we talk a lot about that kind of thing, like emotions, because one, I'm a music teacher, and music is what feelings sound like, so I'm used to kind of talking about that kind of stuff. So I think that I understand kind of your thought processes and that kind of thing and what you're feeling.
Yeah, so I think it's good to be similar, but it's nice to have a balance in a friendship like you two, so we can have that balance too. So I think it's good.
So then the last two letters we haven't covered are the perceiving and the intuition. Now in the last take we established that it was actually kind of confusing, but let me see if I can like summarize it a bit. It turns out that Matt scored, actually you scored higher on the perceiving, but you think that Matt is actually the higher perceiver. How do you explain that sort of paradox?
No, is that the one with go with the flow?
Yeah, perceiving is like go with the flow. You prefer to like analyze as opposed to tell, more like spontaneous.
I'm more spontaneous and go with the flow, and I'm late a lot, so like I kind of am more optimistic of time probably.
So you guys, though they were early to our hangout today.
Yeah.
For the record.
Yeah. I think so I'm actually higher in that aspect with being more go with the flow is what you're...
That's what you did on the test at least. I don't know if that's actually accurate in real life.
Maybe when I was listening to you like on the phone, maybe I misunderstood you or something like that on a couple of them, but I think that I'm more go with the flow.
I'd say so. I think I'm a little bit more of a planner just in general, like with my work and school and stuff. I think it kind of makes you a little bit more organized, and you have to like adapt to that.
And being around me all the time, they have to get used to like, okay, Paul, what's next on your timetable?
You have an agenda for us today, all the stuff we're going to do.
Yeah, I have like a pretty strict itinerary, and except I always forget to plan for meals, so there's that perceiving side of me. Then the last letter that... So, the last letter that we didn't even cover in the previous take was the intuition, which I believe, if I'm remembering the results correctly, you two were pretty even in that, like with only like maybe a 2%, 3% difference. So like, how would you describe like the main difference between me being a sensor and you guys being intuitives? Like,
can we recap a little again what the difference?
Okay,
I always get that one confused.
Okay, so
might want to know that too.
Sensors are all about like what is real. So like for me, I say this is a computer. This is a real concrete thing. Or like, sorry, it's all reversed in my webcam. I have brown hair. That's like a real, genuine thing. Whereas an intuitive, well, let me back up a bit. Also, sensors are usually more about what is either in the past or in the present. Usually it's the extroverted sensors that are more in the present. Introverted sensors like myself are more in the past. We have a very vivid recall of like memories, data, like things we've learned. Whereas intuitives are usually more like abstract, big picture thinkers. Usually they like philosophy and like, you know, discussing like the secrets of the universe.
So you're more like detail oriented.
Like when I describe going to a retreat, I'll describe like what the building looked like and like how many people were there and what everyone was wearing. You guys will just try to summarize it all up into, and maybe not even do it in words my type can understand. Like you might try to talk about God in a very poetic, flowery way, and I'll be
or
like,
maybe say it like in a story form or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Or I describe our emotions during the retreat or how we felt.
Yeah.
I think that's
what we were thinking.
Yeah,
And I would, if I were to get emotional during a retreat, I'd likely say it more precisely. Like, I might be saying, I am sad because I lost my job the other day. Like, it's very precise and to the point. Or they might say something like, I am sad because I am feeling overwhelmed by these continuous feelings of, I don't know. That's
We get you, though.
Yeah, I get the point.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't remember if we did this in this take or not. It's getting a bit confusing by now. But I know we talked about how, like, one major thing we had to sort of work on during, like, at least the last couple of months in particular was sensors are very literal people and intuitives are a bit more analytical and more, like, trying to figure out, like, the best, like, maximum way to express something. So oftentimes they've had to learn to be a bit more precise in how they word things. Let me give you an example in case this is sounding a little bit confusing. So there was a time period where I was going through depression and I didn't feel loved by anyone. But since the Greeks have 6 different definitions for love, whenever I would hear the words like, I love you and you mean so much to me, I'd be like, I'm sorry, but I don't get it. Like, what exactly is this love and how do you prove it? Is it something you can feel? Is it something you can taste? Is it something you can touch? And for the life of them, they did not know how to explain it. They're like, well, we just do, okay? Remember in my previous intuitive videos, I said, you always know someone's intuitive when they use the words just because or just because as like a describer of something.
You covered that in a video?
Yeah, I did. I think it was when I was talking about INFJs, because they're notorious for not giving straight answers. But, so I guess that's my end of it, was asking for, like, more proof. But were there ever any struggles with, like, my sensing ever being, like, too confusing for your intuitive mind?
A little bit. Yeah, like when you were telling us how, like, well, what do you mean by that and stuff? It's like, we're your friends and, like, we love you.
And I'd be like, well, what exactly do you mean by friend? Because there's, like, friends at work, and then there's, like, your family, and then there's friends that you see at the park. And it's like, how would you define friendship in a literal, concrete form?
And it's really something difficult to do because you're asking, like, it's such a broad concept, what am I trying to say? But
Concept?
Concept, thank you. It's like a broad concept, love. Like, you just can't describe love. Like, you just love somebody. And
you don't explain it, you don't, like, you just feel it. You see it, you feel it.
Well, eventually I figured it out once I got out of depression, but at that point, it was just like my sensing was going on overload.
Yeah.
But when I ever tried to describe things to you, did that ever seem a bit confusing? Like, were you ever like, oh my gosh, all these details...
I don't think it was ever, like, confusing. No. It's just different than like, how we express ourselves, I'd say. Like, you just have a different way of saying things. Like, we could say something really similar, but it just comes out different. And I think that's just, like, our difference in personality types. Like, I think that's just kind of what it comes down to. It's not, like, it's something completely different that you were saying, but it sounds different. So.
I think that we all have really similar aspects. It's just maybe you're just higher in one thing and we're lower in one thing, or... vice versa.
Yeah, we expressed in an earlier take that we actually all share the same functions, but just in a different order. So, for instance, my dominant function is introverted sensing, but they also have introverted sensing, but it's their bottom function, which this might hurt your feelings a little bit, guys, but let's be honest. ENFPs typically aren't always totally aware of what's going on around them, and they sometimes have a reputation for being forgetful.
Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah. That's good.
Also,
fair enough.
But on the other hand, their tertiary function, which is my secondary function, is extroverted thinking. So that's like that sort of backup reserve for, like, when the emotional support doesn't seem to be working, that's when the more logical, practical side kicks in. And typically, when an ENFP is logical, they're likely to base it off of, like, a source that is external rather than trying to figure it out on their own. Would you say that's accurate, or would you say you're the exception to that?
That's a good one.
Well, maybe I can try to give an example.
Yeah.
So, like, oftentimes, like, if I have a problem, I'm the type of person that I usually seek like practical advice for like, okay, what do I do? Maybe that's just me being a guy.
Well, it depends what problem you're talking about. Like,
well, I'm about to get into that. So maybe that's just me being a guy, because typically, and I say typically because those political correctivists out there, but typically the masculine role is doers, not talkers, and females are more like the listeners, the emotional supporters. So oftentimes when I ask for advice, I ask for practical, like, okay, what should I do? What action should I take? And oftentimes, like, when they put their minds to it, they can get surprisingly, like, really rational. And they're just like, okay, have you ever thought about it like this? And it's like, oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point. And it lines up with the more logical preference that I have.
I don't know if this is just like ENFPs or if this is more of a strength just in women, but I think you're good at like putting things into perspective for us to figure out stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Because I'm kind of like one of those, like, if there's a problem, you fix it, you do it. And then I think that with women, it's sometimes if there's a problem, it's more you just want to talk about it and we just have to listen, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to fix that problem. Sometimes fixing the problem is just being there to listen. And I think that's something that guys, I don't know if I'm just being stereotypical or if this is actually like true, but I think that women are I think they're better listeners than guys are sometimes. And I think guys just want to fix things sometimes, and that's kind of the struggle, is sometimes guys just want to fix the problem, and really what would be the best way is just to actually listen, and that would help more than just trying to figure out a way to fix something.
Well, actually, that was the original definition of perceiving. As a lot of people think perceiving is only like a spontaneous go with the...
Sorry.
A lot of people used to think that perceiving was only a like spontaneous go with the flow, but Carl Jung originally defined it as perceivers prefer to take in, judges prefer to express outwardly. And that's why the system is messed up for introverts, because my dominant function is a taking in function. So like by socionic standards, I would be considered an ISTP, but because these guys are extroverts, they don't have to worry about that system screwing them up. So their dominant function is a perceiving one, and yet they're still called ENFPs. Anyway, I always hate it when my videos go over 25 minutes, so
We're already there.
I know, I'm inwardly cringing right now.
Well, wait a minute. What if you did like a part 1 and a part 2 eventually?
Ooh. Hey, that's not a bad idea.
That'd be a teaser.
Okay, so there's that intuition coming up with some awesome new ideas. So thanks a lot, guys, for that. And so, as I always say, and then you guys will get a chance to insert your own catchphrase later. Keep the faith, stay epic, God bless.
Treat everyone like it's their birthday.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Stupid webcam.